Hello and welcome to another episode of the Tianquiztli Creations podcast. I'm your host, Elle, and happy Sunday, guys. Believe it or not, you are actually listening to an episode that I recorded on the same day and released on the same day. Why? Because I have no organization, but the reason why I continue to do these episodes, it's because it really gives me a moment to distract myself into something I enjoy doing versus things that I have to do because capitalism. But but I do enjoy making these episodes, and although I did my research a few weeks ago, I actually was down health-wise with the flu for about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks, honestly, and it was not fun. So that's actually also why I took a while to finish this episode, because I know I spoke about the idea probably over 2 weeks ago or so on our last episode, but you haven't heard that one, please go listen to it. I believe that's in regards to like haunted roads in America, which is also fun to make. And it was also fun to give you an update on what was going on, what projects I had going on for the new year. And so, yeah, that's why it kind of took me a while to get this one done. But here we are. And again, the idea behind this series that we're going to be starting, or I'm going to be starting, is that we're going to go from the 18th century up to the more recent known serial killers. So it's a bit of a twist, I would say, because it's more of a crime focused series than our past episodes in regards to I would say more of the traditional indigenous culture episodes. But I'm very much excited to share the information that I have learned. And so without further ado, let's get started. So again, we're going to be uncovering some of the 18th century serial killers. In this specific episode, we're going to be talking about two. And one of these, I couldn't find too much information. And honestly, it was a bit confusing because the information I did find was for a completely different serial killer with very similar name. And for this one, for this specific serial killer, the name that I found was the Monster of Florence. That's what his moniker was. And it took place, or his killings took place in Florence, Italy, a city usually known for art and culture. But in the mid 1700s, it was also home to a predator known as the Monster of Florence. So little is known about the identity of this killer, and I can attest because, again, I did some really deep research, and he was not an easy person to find online. But the story goes that a man preyed upon young women in the countryside surrounding Florence, and reports suggest that his victims were primarily farm workers and maids, often targeted as they walked alone after sundown. Many of the bodies were discovered near the Arno River, their throats slit in unnerving precision. So basically stating that he had a really good skill with knives. This led some to speculate that the killer had a background in surgery or butchery. Despite the public hysteria and various attempts at mad hunts, the perpetrator's identity remained a mystery. Florence's authorities even turned to astrologers and mystics for guidance, further demonstrating the desperation of the time. Now, it's actually interesting that they brought that up because even in today's world, it's not unheard of that after a case goes cold, right, cold files, they do tend to go a little bit more the unorthodox direction, and they will hire different forms of astrologers, different forms of the spiritual individuals that could possibly help the cases come to a close. And in some of them actually are actually closed because one of these individuals was able to provide the officials with some information that they were not aware of. So always keep an open mind. Now, during the 18th century, many unsolved murders were attributed to witches, demons, or even mythical creatures. possible that the lack of understanding of criminal behavior allowed such killers to operate in plain sight because they weren't really being looked for. You know, the police at the time had no idea what they were dealing with. I mean, look at Jack the Ripper. Like, how many people did he murder? And it took them decades, if not more, I feel like, for them to close that specific crime or resolve, or solve that crime. And I think even now there's so many different theories. Like, we're not really fully, I feel convinced, I'm not fully convinced that they even had the right guy, because so much, went on that I doubt they had the right tools or the evidence. They were able to keep the evidence from back then to really identify who this was. So I feel like all that really is just, hearsay in a way. I haven't seen any of the latest information on Jack the Ripper, so maybe there's information I'm not aware of. But the killers were able to operate in plain sight. And in this, specific case, a lot of them thought it was more of a supernatural being that was, behind the murders. That would make sense. If you're not aware of, or you're not sure what's going on, you're going to think it's something supernatural. It's the logical, I guess, way to go. But this is, like I said, really interesting because I looked up the Monster of Florence and it brought me to a serial killer. I believe this one was in Italy, but he was from like the 70s and 80s. And there are actually books written about this specific one. So 1968 to 1985. So the serial killer was um, known in Italy during that time frame, and it's said that he murdered at least 16 people in the hills outside Florence between 1968 to 1985. And they actually found some DNA sometime in August of 2024, where they finally started to close in on who could this person be. So again, like I said, it was a bit confusing because anytime I would look this person or this moniker up, it would bring up a whole different serial killer. Well, let's move on to our second serial killer of the night, which was known as the human crocodile. And this serial killer was known to be a woman out of France named Marie Madeleine, I'm going to butcher this, Debray, earned the moniker the human crocodile. She was an aristocrat turned a murderer who used poison to eliminate her rivals and family members alike. And it seems that she began her murder spree when she discovered the effects of arsenic, often referred to as inheritance powder, in her social circles. Her victims included her husband, her father-in-law, and even a close friend who had confided in her. It is said that she initially used her knowledge of poisons to solve personal disputes, but as time went on, her motivations appeared to grow more sinister. Her final count of victims is unknown, but it is believed to number in the dozens. So basically, if you made her upset, you were done. That's it. No more. Non-existing to Marie. Marie Madeleine's crimes were finally uncovered when a servant, suspicious of her actions, exposed her methods to local authorities. The subsequent investigation revealed arsenic-laced drinks and incriminating letters that detailed her plans. Her trial became a sensation, with crowds gathering daily to hear the shocking details. In 1757, she was convicted and executed by burning, a punishment reserved for crimes deemed heinous by the standards of the time. Why would you write your plans to murder someone down? Like, don't, why? Why would you do that? It is said that poisoning was a common crime in the 18th century, especially among the elite. With no forensic toxicology, many perpetrators went undetected for years. Women like Marie Madeleine often exploited societal assumptions about their innocence, making their crimes all the more insidious. So that is actually quite interesting because it is true, just like I mentioned before. These police forces at the time, and sometimes you actually, if you watch like any of like the Century pieces, you can kind of see how they do tend to not know much. It seems like the officers were just getting paid to hang out and drink coffee in a sense, but they just didn't have the departments that we have today. And even by today's standards, some of those departments, depending on your city or town, they can definitely use some upgrades. There are many towns, small towns, and I would say those located inside of like Indian reserves, that they lack the technology or the equipment, right? Same thing. So technology, I would say, and manpower, really, to be able to solve crimes like this. And this could be a reason why so many crimes go unsolved, especially those of missing people. That's definitely a whole different episode, but very interesting to look into and very serious issue among the Indian reserves where many women and children go missing, and it takes them years upon years to find, not even find them, it's just like taking them years to find, and evidence of what could have happened. Doesn't always turn out the way that families want it to, but it's quite a problem, definitely something to look into. And I will also say, that of course there has been a lot of technology upgrades, but I feel like it's just not really fair, I would say, among the country. And if you ask me at this point, and I can't say I'm an expert, but I did, graduate with a criminal justice degree years ago. It has been a paperweight since then, and that sucks. But, I will say this, that it really just depends on the push of the the families at this point, right? When something happens, but whether it be someone missing or murder, like it, it just depends on how far the family is going to push the officials, I would say, to get an answer, because unfortunately they are usually swamped with many cases, many of those that have been unresolved for decades. And I don't know how they prioritize those cases, but I would hope, that all of them would get the same attention. Unfortunately, that's not normally the case. So, all right. So, these stories reminds us of humanity's capacity for darkness, even in a time romanticized for its elegance and enlightenment. They also underscore how fear and superstition shape communities' response to crime. Reflecting on these cases also raises questions about how gender and class played a role in the perception and execution of justice. Did the monster Florence escape detection because his victims were poor and laborers? And was Marie Madeleine's downfall accelerated by her defiance of societal norms for women of her status? Very good questions, because it doesn't seem like they gave them the same treatment when it came to sentencing, where she was burned and he actually, I don't even think it tells you what happened to him. They just say that they convicted him. Nope, not even that. It just kind of says that they had evidence that he did murder laborers, and that's about it. I don't even think he went to jail for that. So that is interesting. Whereas she was burned for her crimes, and honestly, I'm not surprised. I'm trying to scheme through my notes, and I'm really not surprised that it was treated two very different ways. But this is just the beginning, guys. Like, I think we're gonna continue to bring in a little bit more, I would say, century crimes, right? I think I'm going to be adding a little bit more into the next episode, because this was kind of a quick one just to kind of get started and give you an idea, a taste of what's yet to come. Of course, the further we go into each century, the more unfortunate crimes we're going to find. Specifically, this one's a hard one because it was hard to get some information on these. And of course, how could we know things when there was very little ways to really keep track of all this? But I hope that you enjoyed this really short, kind of a preview to what's yet to come episode. And definitely give us a follow. I don't know that we are going to continue to use all social medias moving forward. I will probably continue to use Instagram for now for the time being, just to let you all know when a new episode drops. But what I really want to do moving forward is actually switch over all of our audience to YouTube, because that seems to be where we're going to be posting a lot more video content as well as short clips. Obviously, unless you live under a rock, you all know that TikTok is probably on its final days. So we have not been posting there as often as I used to anymore. And to be honest, I don't know if we're going to continue to post at all on Instagram and Facebook at this time. And so that's why I would highly recommend, if you want to keep in in touch, with the channel, or just, keep yourself up to date into for new episodes, just follow us on YouTube, along with any of our other listening platforms, which we can be found on Apple Podcast, Amazon, Audible, YouTube, of course, as well as Castbox and Spotify. So definitely give us a follow, a like, leave a comment. I know those platforms are open for comments and likes. And again, just want to say thank you for giving us a listen. You're giving me a listen. I told you guys that is never going to change. I I don't think my brain knows that it's just me when I do all the episodes and how much work I put into it. So it always thinks that we're money. And no, I'm not crazy. But thank you for the support, and until next time.